In my last video, I talked about a great rivalry that was Bret Hart vs. Shawn Michaels. In this one, I want to talk about the criminally underrated rivalry that was CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy. This was a feud that had a number one babyface in the company at the time in Hardy, but also saw the turn of Punk from fan favorite to the biggest villain in the company by the beginning of Fall. The program between the charismatic enigma and the straight-edge superstar was brilliantly done, because it involved subtle character development throughout, instead of one big moment that saw such a drastic change. Punk and Hardy had mutual respect for one another, but their vastly different personalities and moral codes would drive each man to the point of hatred. Throw in a huge prize in the World Heavyweight Championship, and everything was at stake. A supporting character that played a pivotal role in getting the Punk vs. Hardy rivalry started was none other than Edge. The rated R superstar appeared to be the only obstacle in Hardy's way of becoming a long-time major champion. What a better story to tell at Extreme Rules 2009 than Edge vs. Jeff Hardy in a ladder match for the World Championship. Most of Jeff and Edge's history together were in tag team matches that involved ladders, and while Jeff had most of the highlight reel moments, Edge came out of most of those encounters the victor. After a hard-fought main event match, Jeff pulled Edge through the ladder, climbed up, and claimed the World Heavyweight Championship. The fans finally got the moment they were waiting for. The underdog, their hero, he was now champ. And then it happened. Fans were reminded of the stipulation known as the Money in the Bank contract that allowed recent winner CM Punk to cash in on the champion at any time he wanted. Following a brutal ladder match, this was the perfect time for Punk to cash in. Still, Hardy showed fight by kicking out of a GTS, but a fresh Punk was too much. Jeff Hardy was able to conquer Edge, but by the end of the night, CM Punk was the new world champion. The next Friday on SmackDown, the new champ was left trying to explain his actions. Punk was still a babyface despite mixed reviews from fans. He explained that while Jeff went through hell at Extreme Rules before the cash-in, Punk went through hell to get the contract that allowed him to have the said cash-in. Fans might not have been happy, but this was a valid point. Jeff interrupted Punk and was not buying his explanation. It would be easy to just jump into Punk vs. Hardy for the title here, but Edge would interrupt. We usually see a champion get a rematch after they lose their title, but technically, there were two former champions from the night of Extreme Rules. How many times do we see important characters in wrestling just disappear from a storyline because it makes things simpler? Edge wanting a rematch helped delay the one-on-one Punk and Hardy feud, but also his back and forth with the straight-edge superstar would solidify Punk's status as a babyface at the time. A number one contender match would be booked between Edge and Hardy for that night. During the contest, Edge would throw Hardy into Punk at the announce table. This would set off Punk, who would attack Edge in anger. The only problem is, this would cause a disqualification. In the moment, it looked like Punk just cost Hardy a title shot. It is understandable why Punk went after Edge, but chalk this up as a second time he would negatively impact Hardy in the world title scene. Fans were starting to cool down their support of CM Punk, not because he was doing anything evil, but because his actions directly affected top fan favorite Jeff Hardy. Teddy Long would right this wrong by making the upcoming World Championship match a triple threat by adding Hardy. This match would take place on a special 3-hour edition of Raw. Remember when that was a thing, a special 3-hour edition of Raw? That night's Raw would take place in North Carolina, Hardy's home state, meaning he was an even bigger fan favorite on this night. Edge was here to eat the pin, but who would reap the reward? In the latter stages of this match, it would appear that Punk tweaked his knee. Hardy hits Whisper in the Wind on Edge and almost gets the 3, but Punk musters up enough strength to break up the pin attempt. Hardy fights off Punk and looked to have the title won when he hit Edge with a Swanton bomb. But Punk breaks up the pin again and tosses Hardy from the ring and quick pins Edge. This would be the third time Punk had taken a big moment from the fans who were anticipating a Jeff Hardy win. Could you blame the straight-edge superstar though? He didn't cheat. It was just another case of Punk being in the right place at the right time. What made this so effective was Punk did not vastly change his morals. He was just subtly planting seeds that he would be the heel in a feud versus Jeff. It is not that Punk was intentionally trying to screw Hardy. It was just the result of, for Punk to succeed, Jeff would have to fail. On the next edition of SmackDown, General Manager Teddy Long would announce that at the Bash, it would be Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk for the World Championship. This leads to an interview of Hardy and Punk by Josh Matthews, asking both superstars about their thoughts on the upcoming title match. At the end of the interview, Matthews would ask the crowd to give it up for Jeff Hardy. The fans respond with a raucous ovation. Then Matthews asked the crowd to give it up for CM Punk, to a mixed, milder response. This was WWE's first conscious attempt to showcase the popularity of each guy. In one way, the support for Jeff helps as it gives his character extra motivation to succeed. At the same time, the fans slowly abandoning Punk with no actual wrongdoing is a real reason to build resentment for his character. All the time we see a wrestler who is cheered turn heel and then blame the crowd. It just seems less credible, irrational. In the case of CM Punk, he had a real reason to become frustrated with the fans. This would become evident on the next episode of SmackDown, when Punk would attack John Morrison following a loss in a non-title match. Still, this would not be the last we would see of Punk for the night. The future voice of the Voiceless would be the special guest referee in a tag team cage match involving the rainbow-haired warrior. Hardy stood out as the premier talent in a match that involved Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho, and Edge. Unfortunately for the top babyface at the time, the presence of the world champion would be enough of a distraction to cost Hardy the match. The weird moment came after the match when Punk took the microphone and asked the crowd to give it up for Hardy. An odd move that could be translated as classy or sarcastic depending on the person. The bash would be the first of 3 pay-per-view encounters between the two. Before the match even gets started, Hardy receives a loud ovation for his entrance. Punk gets a mixed response. There are still signs for the straight-edge superstar at the event because he is slowly turning heel, but he is yet to do anything egregious to turn the mass majority against him. Hardy's narrative from the announce team was that his crash and burn style could eventually cost him. And while there were misses on high-risk moves, the mentioning of it being Hardy's Achilles heel would be foreshadowing to later in the feud. On this particular night, it looked like the stars were aligning. Punk down, Hardy to the top rope, Swanton. The crowd rejoiced as they thought Jeff just won the World Championship, but it was ruled that Punk's foot was under the bottom rope. A false finish on this night was just another way to push the Hardy title chase a little bit further down the road. The match resumed. Punk seemed desperate. After repeated elbows by Hardy, Punk grabs his eye. The action stops for Punk to recover, when suddenly the compromised superstar kicks the referee in the back, causing a disqualification. Another unfortunate event that has prevented Jeff from capturing the ultimate prize. Despite the selling of the injury, Hardy doesn't buy it. He attacks Punk after the match. The fans cheer, but still, the title does not change hands. Later in the week on SmackDown, Punk starts the show in the ring. At this point, the boos are outweighing the cheers, but the fans are still mixed on Punk. The Chicago native revisits the events from the bash. In this promo, Punk comes across as whiny, as he talks about his eye injury, and also demands Hardy come to the ring to apologize. Not only does Punk not get his apology, but a rematch is set between the two for Night of Champions. Following a quick back and forth, Punk takes another step in his heel turn when he references Jeff's substance abuse directly for the first time. Over the coming weeks, remarks about Hardy's past is what makes Jeff more sympathetic as a babyface and Punk more hated as a heel. This was the perfect talking point to get both superstars more over. The story of Jeff Hardy was, he's not perfect, he has made mistakes, and he does not run from his past. In the case of CM Punk, he lives a straight-edge lifestyle, never been suspended. So it is possible he would be resentful of someone who has made as many mistakes as Hardy and is still beloved. Both superstars' pettiness would continue until their clash at Night of Champions. On this night in Philadelphia, it was finally clear in the story that Punk was the heel and Hardy was the unquestioned babyface. Was this the night where Jeff would finally end the chase and capture the World Championship? The feeling in the air was this might be the time. That is until a GTS is delivered. But Jeff kicked out at 2 3/4. Punk realizes he can't beat Hardy, not on this night. He grabs the World Championship and heads up the ramp. Being so close before, Jeff couldn't afford to waste another opportunity. It had to happen tonight. Hardy chases down Punk, gets him back in the ring, hits a twist of fate, and climbs to the top rope. It is at this moment that Todd Grisham gives a callback to other times where Jeff was close to winning the World Championship. Grisham would ask if this was the time or the moment, and on this night, he would ask if this was the moment of glory for Jeff Hardy, as he finally landed a Swanton bomb and pinned CM Punk for the title. There was a Hardy party amongst WWE fans, and they could breathe a sigh of relief. Jeff finally did it. The party continued in the start of SmackDown. After coming so close for so long, Jeff was the world champion. In the journey to the title, it was important to make Hardy sympathetic, but now he had to be a fighting champion. After successfully defending his championship against John Morrison, a familiar face would come to the ring to congratulate the new champ. A confused Jeff wanted to hear what Punk had to say, but it was a ruse, and Punk attacked Hardy. In the following weeks, it became clear that the rivalry was not just about the World Championship. It had been personal. When a feud reaches a point of hatred, it can't just be settled in an ordinary match. Neither participant is thinking rationally, so the stipulation needs to reflect that. At SummerSlam, it would be a TLC match. In the final pay-per-view encounter between the two, the physicality was taken to a new level. Also, the toll on Hardy's body was adding up as he had competed in a number of specialty matches throughout the summer. This, and the crash and burn mentality of Hardy, would play into the finish of the TLC match. Outside the ring, Jeff would climb a ladder and connect on a swanton through the table on Punk. In most cases, this would be a good thing for Hardy, but the wear and tear accumulated on Jeff's body over the past few months mixed in with what was a high-risk move, and it was a death sentence. Hardy would try to cut off Punk at the top of the ladder, but the charismatic Enigma was compromised. With a fallen hero who gave his all broken down on the mat, the villain would stand atop the ladder victorious. The final chapter of Jeff Hardy vs. CM Punk would be written on the following episode of SmackDown in a loser leaves WWE steel cage match. The rumors swirling around the dirt sheets suggested that Hardy was going to take some time off, but it did not stop fans from cheering Jeff on. At one point, the charismatic Enigma was almost out of the cage, with Punk only grabbing a hold of the back of Hardy's head. Unfortunately, this would be the closest Hardy would get to escaping as his body finally gave out. Punk won. Hardy was gone. The following SmackDown had Punk dress up as Hardy and even start the show with his theme music. It was official. Punk was the most hated wrestler in the company. Mission accomplished. When I look back at this rivalry, I think of an all-time great feud that does not get the credit it deserves. In the case of Jeff Hardy, fans felt such a wide range of emotion during his journey towards the World Championship. Disappointment when he didn't leave Extreme Rules as champion, anger at how the match went down at the Bash, excitement and joy when he finally won the title at Night of Champions, and sadness when he had to say goodbye following his final loss. In the case of CM Punk, we watched his integrity deteriorate throughout the rivalry. Still, at no point did I question whether Punk had abandoned his beliefs. The straight-edge superstar just became incensed with jealousy over Hardy's popularity and the opportunities he had despite making numerous mistakes. The structure of the feud was quite impressive as well. It went from cash in on a compromised superstar, to a triple threat match with Edge being the one beaten, to a standard one-on-one contest that ended in disqualification, to another standard one-on-one contest with the championship finally changing hands, to extreme stipulation matches like TLC and a loser leaves town world championship cage match. Their program ended at the perfect time. Even after 3 scheduled pay-per-view matches and numerous TV matches, fan interest was still at its highest. And for that reason, I believe this is one of the most underrated feuds in wrestling history. This is Rivalry Revisited, Punk vs. Hardy.